I've just always taken the time to, meet with people or listen to people's stories, and so to me, it's like always taking the meeting, I think is something that, I've excelled at. And, you might have an idea of, somebody, but until you have that conversation and, really sit down with them, you have no idea where that can go. It's rarely going to be a complete waste of time. And I think sometimes you can figure that out before. It's not like you have to take every single meeting, but, as long as it aligns with, your goals, I think it's like, always take the meeting. You never know where those conversations lead to, and just building your network is huge. It's gotten me basically to any role that I've been in, honestly. And it's never a bad thing to work on that. And, people will appreciate you taking the time to meet with them and learn more about them and, feel that they're cared about. People really appreciate that.
Welcome to The In Factor, conversations with entrepreneurs who started, stumbled, and succeeded. I'm Rebecca White, and my guest on today's episode is Executive Director of Tampa Bay Tech, Meghan O'Keefe. Growing up in a family focused on college athletics, Meghan graduated from John Carroll University, where she played competitive soccer all 4 years. Since then, she's worked in a variety of industries before joining the nonprofit sector at Tampa Bay Tech, whose mission is to radically connect the tech community in Tampa Bay. Today, Meghan and I talk about the importance of an entrepreneurial mindset, the growth of the technology sector in Tampa Bay, and the 3 questions she was taught to ask when she is faced with failure. Now listen in, because I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Meghan, thank you for joining me today on The In Factor.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited. And, I've been following along what you've been doing at UT, and it's pretty awesome to see. And everybody that I've met that's involved with it and coming out of there, all great people, all great collaborators in the Tampa Bay community. So I love seeing what you guys are doing. So
thank you. Thank you. Well, this is a lot of fun for me, and I really enjoy it, and love the Tampa Bay community as well. It's been a joy to be at the University of Tampa. So today I'm really excited, Meghan, because you lead one of our entrepreneurial support organizations here in Tampa Bay. And I think it's always great to have the opportunity to talk to people that are in that role, that support entrepreneurs and that bring that entrepreneurial mindset to these organizations that help us build our entrepreneurial ecosystems around the country and the world, quite honestly. And Tampa Bay has really grown a lot. But I'd like to sort of back up a little bit before we kind of get into talking about Tampa Bay Tech and your work there, and get a little bit of a feel for who you are and how you got into this role. So I know you went to John Carroll University. I'm very familiar with that. They have an entrepreneurship program up there also. So I'm just really curious, have you always wanted to be in, working with entrepreneurs and in the entrepreneurship space? And, have you been an entrepreneur in your life up to this point?
Yeah, no, all great questions for sure. And I know I'm very jealous because John Carroll did not have that program when I was going through there. So honestly, no, like thinking about entrepreneurship wasn't a thing for me. I grew up, my dad was actually a football coach and my mom was a teacher and did a lot of different jobs as we moved around for his work. But, I don't know, entrepreneurship just wasn't a word in our household. And a lot of the people that, my parents were friends with, or I knew, even if they are called entrepreneurs now, they weren't really called that, when I was growing up. So it wasn't really something that I thought about. But both my parents my dad's pretty innovative. Even though he's a football coach, he was always really business savvy and helped me along the ways of just like good ideas for different things, if it was, during schoolwork or even, with different jobs I've had. And then my mom is like super creative and has always been the person, when we came home with homework and had issues or problems, that she would be able to like help on different projects or help me think of how to do something in a different way. So, it might not have been the entrepreneur mindset, but I still grew up in a like kind of innovative thinking, creative thinking atmosphere. So I think that's kind of taken me along this way into, where I am now. But yeah, no, it definitely wasn't something that I thought about before.
Yeah, I love your answer, your response, and the way that you framed that, because I too grew up in a household where the word entrepreneur wasn't something that we used. My mom was a business owner at one point, but she had an entrepreneurial mindset in everything that she did. Like your parents. And so I learned that, as you probably did as a child. The ability to see opportunity, the willingness to take action, and the perseverance to keep executing past failure, which is actually the three competencies of entrepreneurship that I write about in my book. See, do, repeat. So, that I love your answer to that. So you found yourself at John Carroll, which is in Northern Ohio, the Cleveland area. Are you from that part of you said you moved around a lot. So you've traveled and lived in a lot of places with your family?
Yeah. Since my dad was a football coach, we kind of had to go where his roles took us. But I was born in Pennsylvania, in Meadville, where Allegheny College is. And then my dad got a new job at Fordham University. So we ended up moving to Connecticut. Both my parents are actually from there. So it was a fun time because we actually lived near family for the first time and the only time. And then his profession took us to Iowa. He was at the University of Iowa for several years. So I mostly grew up there. And he actually went to John Carroll. So that's how I knew about it. And it was kind of a last minute decision. I was actually enrolled at Mizzou. I wanted to go through their journalism program. And then last minute, I just wanted to still play soccer somewhere. And, it ended up being the perfect fit for me.
Yeah. I think I read that you played soccer all 4 years. So good for you. And no knee injuries and all that?
Knock on wood. I still try to play once a week in the club sports here, but luckily I've been pretty lucky throughout my career in athletics that no real bad injuries. So.
Yeah, a lot of athletes, I think, develop that entrepreneurial mindset, certainly the resilience and perseverance piece. And there are a lot of different ways through our lives, I think, that we can develop those skills, not just with starting businesses. But when we get to the point that we're leading or starting businesses, those skills can be really valuable. So I'm sure that you've found a lot of that a lot of those skills and training that you developed, and as an athlete and throughout your life with a father who was a coach, I'm sure you've been able to apply a lot of those. So tell us how you. Let's talk a little bit about Tampa Bay Tech. What is Tampa Bay Tech, and how did you get to this role with Tampa Bay Tech?
Yeah. So Tampa Bay Tech is a nonprofit membership-based organization. So our real mission is to truly radically connect the tech community in Tampa Bay. And we do that through, different initiatives, but it's a lot of networking. It's a lot of programming. And we just do a lot of things throughout the year that really bring the community, the tech community here closer. Whether it's helping people learn more about the technologies that are up and coming, helping in tech advancement in the area, and just creating those better partnerships in the area so that our ecosystem is really working together to, really help make Tampa Bay a tech hub. And so, the kind of the cool thing about our organization is it's been around for 23 years now and was created when tech definitely wasn't a thing in Tampa Bay, right? Florida was traditionally known for agriculture and tourism, and 23 years later now, we are that tech ecosystem. And so this organization was kind of formed to bring those, it was a lot of like tech professionals and non-tech companies together, to be collaborative, to work together, to learn about the different technologies. And so we've kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, I moved to Tampa 14 years ago. I can't believe it's been so long. It goes by really fast. But I know when I came, I saw tons of opportunity, but that still wasn't being exploited really and taken advantage of. And the Tampa Bay community has grown phenomenally. And as you pointed out, we've been pretty strong. A few years ago, we did some research on the industries and the concentration of industries. And as you pointed out, tourism and agriculture historically, and then tourism and real estate as well have been big, and then finance. But technology has been a struggle. And I think thanks to organizations like Tampa Bay Tech, we've seen a lot of growth. And so thank you for all that you've done. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you think have been, so let's talk about what have been some of the challenges for technology companies in a city like Tampa Bay that maybe hasn't been historically all about tech, and what do you think some of the challenges are? What have the historical challenges been, and kind of what are we still struggling with?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on, the stage of the company that, you're talking about. For Tampa Bay Tech, a lot of our members are a little more advanced. It's not typically the startup. We know Tampa Bay Wave, Embark Collective, Tampa Bay Innovation Center, they have great resources for the startups. But a lot of the other companies that have been around for a while, really was just like trying to feel included. Who else in this area is doing what I'm doing, and figuring out who those people are that they can work with and collaborate with, and just, try to figure out what's going on as these tech advancements are happening. And then just like creating those structures for career development as well, so making sure that, people have the opportunity to learn, what the next stage for them will be in their tech career, and making sure that, we can help get them to that point. So I think a lot of that. And then, for some of these startups, it's, you were talking about real estate. We have a lot of money here in Florida, and in Tampa Bay, it's a little more hidden. And, there's a lot of investors, but a lot of real estate investors. And so, how we change that narrative and how we get people to maybe switch their mind from only investing in real estate to helping the community a little bit more, and investing in some of these startups and some of these people that, are really doing innovative, great things right here in our own community.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And your last comment, I think a lot of people don't even know what great things are going on, and who else is here. So providing the connectivity and and connecting the dots, so to speak, for a lot of these entrepreneurs is really, really important. And you mentioned that we do have a lot of other organizations that work with the startups, and that yours is with organizations that, are a little bit more mature. Can you talk a little bit about some of the new technologies and things that are happening in Tampa Bay, maybe that a lot of people don't know about? Of course, we're all thinking about generative AI right now. So, that's kind of the conversation, but I'm sure there are a lot of other things that are going on in Tampa. Where are they, and what are they? What are some of those organizations?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I know I should probably do a little more research. I'm a little outside of the startup ecosystem right now, but there's talking about generative AI, the Maya AI guys, it's a team of 3 brothers that are growing this company. I've known them for a few years, and they've been doing this for a while before people knew what ChatGPT was, and so it's pretty exciting to see right now. I think they're focusing on the healthcare side of things, but they're expanding quite a bit, growing quickly with all the focus on OpenAI and ChatGPT. So it's been exciting to see what they have going on. What else? We have a lot of, because financial services has been so big here, we have a lot of fintech firms that are coming. Intrinio with Rachel Carpenter, she's been working hard for years. She's awesome and running a great team. They've been expanding and growing. Something that has been growing a lot here is cybersecurity. I feel like we've become quite a big hub for cyber companies. I know, Rapid7 just moved and opened an office here, and I just met with another company that's thinking of moving to Tampa from Europe to expand here. So, there's quite a lot of exciting things here that, people don't know. And so it's cool to see that, how our ecosystem and business climate has changed, especially post-COVID, and how quickly that's happened. You've been here 14 years. I've been here 12 years. So I agree. It's been, there was a slow transition. You knew something special was happening here. But the last few years, it's just been pretty remarkable to see how quickly that's really changed, and, see what our ecosystem really can be all about. So it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah. So you mentioned meeting with some of the companies that are moving here. You have a background in economic development, right?
Yeah.
Is that so? So how did you transition into working with tech? Do you have a tech background also?
Not really. Yeah. My background is really all over the place. If you look at my resume, I really tried to start out in sports. It's like what I knew. So I wanted to be like a reporter, sports information. I loved writing. So I started getting into social media and content building and content creation. And so that's actually what got me to Tampa Bay. I worked for Ironman, the triathlon company, for the first few years that I lived here. And then I, transitioned to in-house. I worked for a Apple refurbishing company. So I think that's like maybe where I started to like learn about like the actual like technology of things, and I helped, help their e-commerce and sell online, and help start their B2C marketing. And then I went to a marketing agency called Hook and Blade, and that was probably the first time I really felt entrepreneurial, because I was their first employee. So it was fun to also work with different clients. And then I went into manufacturing in Pinellas County on the sales side. And then one day I get a call from a recruiter to work at the St. Pete EDC, because they liked the background of having sales and marketing. And I, was honestly like, I have no idea what economic development is, but I can tell you, if you look at my background, I'm willing to learn any industry and figure it out. And, what really struck me about that role was, the chance to really be engraved and help the community. And I felt like I was really missing that from my previous roles. And so when they, called me about that, I was pretty upfront, but, the CEO at the time, he just stepped down, but JP Dubuque, he was my best boss I ever had. And when I said that to him, he was like, that's perfect. We want to be untraditional because that's what St. Pete is, and you'll be perfect. And so, I was almost there for 4 years, and, it was a great experience. I was the one who actually did all the prospecting of the companies to come to St. Pete. And so that's kind of where, too, I started towards the, tech industry, because a lot of the companies I was working with were a lot of these startups that were either looking to expand from where they were, or, ready just to find a better business climate for themselves. And so helping them navigate that. And, while I was at the EDC, we were actually members of Tampa Bay Tech. So I was, well aware of what was going on. And we actually would call the CEO, executive director, Jill St. Thomas at the time, all the time to come help us when we had a company in town visiting, and to have her tell the tech story of what was going on in Tampa Bay. So, that's kind of how things all intertwined into, leading me to this position now.
Yeah. Well, I love that because, first of all, you talked about learning, and that's an entrepreneurial mindset as well. Entrepreneurs are good learners. And, you also talked about doing a variety of things. And I think that probably suited you well for what you're doing now. So let's talk a little bit about, there are a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of students I work with that find their application of an entrepreneurial mindset in a not-for-profit. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are the challenges in your mind, and what are the opportunities of running a not-for-profit? How would you even compare it to things that you've done in the for-profit world?
Yeah. That's a good question. Like I said, I think the biggest thing that's drawn me when I started at the EDC and here is really just the ability to work with the community, make an impact. If it's not with what your service is, it's usually within your mission. And so that's been what's been so amazing for me the last few years in the nonprofit world, because sometimes when you're at these other companies that are for profit, it might be something that you guys want to do, but it usually gets left behind, or you really have to make an initiative. Like, do we all go somewhere to volunteer? How do we actually give back? Because that's not your main target at that point. You're usually trying to raise funds or sell your product or whatever that is. So it's usually the maybe byproduct or afterthought of things. So that's really what's drawn me to the nonprofit world. I guess something that was kind of a shock to me. And I know, as private companies, you'll have a board as well, but I haven't ever had to deal with one before. And so, the EDC and having a board that we report to and managing those meetings. And then now at Tampa Bay Tech, it's the same thing. We have close to a 70-person board, which is pretty big and not traditional. And then a 13-person executive committee that is more what I work with day to day. And they do more of the voting on things and stuff like that. But that's usually has been the most interesting part for me, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's just, learning how to utilize your board, I think, is something that, I need to do a better job with. I'm the only one fully employed by the Tampa Bay Tech. So, it's the more I can utilize my board and our members, the better. And so I know that that's something I definitely need to work on and, make sure we're doing going forward.
You bring up a really good point, and it's been something through my career, that I've had to learn as well, is how to lead and take full advantage of a not-for-profit volunteer board, which is really different than a board of directors in a company that's paid and has a fiduciary responsibility to the organization. So you really have to lead with a lot of influence, and it's completely different and challenging at a lot of times when you're in that role. But what great training, I think, for many things in life. And you're right. 70 people on a board is a lot, and managing all those personalities. And thankfully, I'm sure your 13-member executive group really helps you a lot with that. But it's still a challenge, and a really great point. Especially challenging. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs, whether they're starting a for-profit or not-for-profit, are going to find themselves with advisory boards, perhaps at one point or time, or people that are helping them that they may not be paid. And so learning to balance all of that can be challenging, I think.
Yeah, I've been really lucky, like along the way. Along the way, there was, I think, like a decent gap. I don't know if it was 6 months between Jill and myself, but and the EC really led it and kept things moving. And even moving on, like I really think we have a great board. Our members are amazing. Everybody is happy to volunteer, help with anything and everything. And our EC, our chair is Auntie Johnson from Accenture. She's been great. And our vice chair is Chris Carlo with Mercury Works. And they've been really helpful and also, mentoring me and how to lead as well, because it is the first time that I'm actually leading an organization. So they've been monumental in helping me with that.
Yeah, I had that as well. I had some really good board members early on that taught me a lot about how to lead and how to be the CEO of a not-for-profit type of organization. But it's great experience. And for a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of students who want to be entrepreneurs, I recommend to them serving on a volunteer not-for-profit board, because it's a great way to meet people and to learn yourself to be on that board. But I will say this: you're talking about how good they are and helpful, but don't underestimate your role in that, because it takes a strong leader, I think, to make that happen, for people to step up and kind of work, in harmony together towards a goal. So setting that vision and getting people to work together. Speaking of people, and you've got a great board, but a lot of companies struggle with getting talent. Do you see that? One time that was kind of one of the biggest challenges that our tech companies were facing. What are you seeing today in terms of talent? Because it's a challenge, I think, regardless of whether you're a startup, middle stage, or your company's been around for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely still a conversation. I think the thing that's been helpful was, being able to hire basically from anywhere if you're willing to have people virtual. So that can help with things. But, something that I love about Tampa Bay is everybody, for the most part, seems to really want to be localized and wants to hire local, even if a lot of their team is virtual. And so I love hearing that. And I know it makes things a little harder for these companies to hire. But that just means they're investing in some of these other organizations that are doing things. I know like CodeBox is a coding program here that out of St. Pete that they moved from Canada a few years ago. There's Tech Elevator just opened up a location here. There's a lot of different of those, lesser known programs that are up and coming too, that are, specific to tech and coding. But also we have such an advantage in the Tampa Bay area. I think there was a stat of when I was at the EDC, it was like, we're within 90 miles of 81 colleges and universities here. So that entry level, pipeline is amazing. And so if our companies are willing to take that chance and train a little bit more, I know a lot of times what I hear is, these companies want this tech role, this entry level tech role, but they need 2 years experience or something like that. That's not really realistic. And we do have this great database of entry level people here, and they're willing to stick around, but, we need to help, change that dynamic with the companies and the students of, just giving them a little extra training or, opening up those internships sooner so that you can mold them into those entry level roles that you need. So I think a little, some of that still needs, some work in our area. But, with the entry level, we have a great pipeline here, and there's a lot of organizations that are even starting some of that earlier. I don't know if you've heard of Next Gen 360, but Robin's doing awesome things in the high school area where, they're doing a Shark Tank type, thing with high school students here, and they're working on products all throughout the year. And it's amazing to see, that they're coding and they're producing these products and learning how to do all these technical things, and then also learning how to grow their network and learning how to do that for themselves, which also will help them in the future. So, I mean, there's definitely still a tech shortage. I think in general, there was a stat for every 59 unemployed people in the area, there are 100 jobs that are open. So even if we filled every role right now, we would still have an excess amount of jobs. So, I mean, we do have a lot to do to, retain people after they do go to college, or making sure people aren't leaving to go to college. But yeah, so there's definitely a surplus of open jobs right now, but hopefully we're doing some things to change that and fill those roles.
Yeah, we at the University of Tampa, we the majority of our students come from outside of Tampa Bay. We have a large population of students from, all 50 states, all the territories, and all, I think 135 or 40 countries. So we get a lot of people coming here to study, and I know many of them do want to stay. Some of them are unable to for a wide variety of reasons, especially the international students. And I know it's challenging sometimes to hire people that you want if they're internationals, but we do have some great talent coming here, and at all the schools, all the universities nearby. So that's great to hear. You brought up remote work, and so many things changed, during the pandemic. And it's really interesting to me because I think for Tampa Bay, it really was helpful because so many of our tech companies were trying to hire tech talent, and we just didn't have enough here. And, this ability for people to work remotely, even though tech has been leading the way on that for a lot of years, it's become a lot more mainstream. But I'm curious about what you hear from the tech companies about managing remote work and their thoughts on remote work going forward. I know, certain positions are very well suited to it. Others, are not. And then there's a whole lot in between. And so companies are really trying to learn how, I think, to manage remote workforces and what that means. And we hear all kinds of things. We hear that some companies are moving towards getting people back in the office. We hear that other companies are going more fully remote and giving up their real estate completely because it's less expensive. And then we hear that there's some complaints from some employees that they're being overlooked because they're remote and not, don't have FaceTime. So what are you hearing from your companies about remote work? Are we going to be seeing that continue in the future in a big way? And what are the challenges, I guess, with managing it or anything? What are you hearing?
Yeah. I think in general, people want people back in the office. You learn things that, just your interpersonal skills, especially for the entry level roles. These students are used to just being online and taking classes online and doing everything online. If they then have to go in person, it's a big difference. But it's a good difference. You really understand that, like, water cooler talk and why that is important sometimes, but as much as these companies would love to have everybody back in the office, I don't know if that's realistic. I know some companies, Jabil just announced to have everybody back in the office as much as possible. But, I think the companies that are excelling are kind of, being lenient or giving that option of virtual and in the office. And, I think when they don't want to totally completely shut remote work off too, because to your point with like not having as much of the tech workforce here, they want to make sure they can still fill their roles. And so if they have to go with somebody remote, they want that option. But they would love to have people in the office as much as possible because it does help with the collaboration and the innovation and, really excelling in those areas and bringing people together and just creating a better workforce and work group. But yeah, I think the everybody's a little different, and I think, again, we're kind of just in this bubble in Tampa Bay where, we're hearing nationally, internationally of, people doing all these layoffs or, not using their office space and selling their offices. But, it's not the same here. We didn't see a lot of people leave their office space in St. Pete over COVID because we don't have that much. And people are still kind of fighting over it. And then in Tampa, we're seeing companies like Kforce invest in an amazing new spot in Midtown. So it's, we're kind of, I feel like in this nice little bubble, at least for now, where, tech and, the just, company ecosystem and business ecosystem here is still thriving and still strong. So, it's a good place to be right now.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think it's wonderful that we are finally recognized as a great place to be. There's a lot of really good things going on here. I guess the downside that I've seen, talking about space from the time I moved here till now, is the cost of doing business here. Originally, a lot of companies would come here because it was so much cheaper. And it still is. I mean, if you compare it to most of the tech hub cities, it's still less expensive. But we've lost some of that advantage, I think, as cost of property has gone up. But it's a good thing. I mean, a lot of people are moving here, and so there's a lot going on, and a lot. You mentioned that many of your board members were mentors and role models for you. That's a topic I think that's so important. Have you had, in addition to those, or could you talk a little bit about the role of mentors in your career and maybe, how you think about that? Because a lot of the listeners to this podcast, I think, are trying to find people that might be able to help them navigate, their entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I never had a traditional one where it was like somebody that I asked them to be my mentor. And I think I was probably just too scared and too timid when I was younger. That's changed. Luckily, I've been able to come out of my shell a little bit. But yeah, I always just tried to find somebody to, whatever new role I was in or new city, because I kind of moved around a lot right after college. It's hard to move around or even just start in a new office or, whatever you're doing, going to grad school next at a whole different place. Like it's a lot, and it's hard to meet people. It's hard to, find who your people are. But I was always somebody that was, I would always observe everybody else. I'm kind of the behind the scenes person. I like to take things in and then evaluate what's going on. So, wherever I was always trying to find who is the person that really stands out to me, and figure out why that is and what I like about that, and kind of just, try to get close with them and, try to kind of study under them what they're doing. And, when I first started out, I was in sports, and I interned in the NFL with 2 teams. So, they're definitely, there's not a lot of women there. So, when I got to the Green Bay Packers for training camp, there's this woman there, her name's Sarah Quick, and she's still one of the best human beings. But, I just thought she was amazing of how she handled herself. And, it's not being timid or, thinking that we're at a disadvantage of being a woman and a man in a usual man-filled roles, and just navigating it and using it as a advantage and not thinking about it in that way. But also all right, if that is the thing, how do we bring other people that feel the same way to feel that same way and feel uplifted and feel like they have a voice? And, I thought she was great, just showing me how to navigate a world like that. And I had another person when I first moved to Florida. I moved to work at FAU in the sports information department, and the woman leading it was Katrina McCormick, and she just had this mentality that things would come up. We had a small staff and we were flying all over the place with the football teams. And she just like the way she could keep her cool and keep things together, even when everybody else is kind of all over the place. I learned a lot from her of just like that easygoing mentality. And, a lot of times, you think what's going on is the end of the world, but most of the time it doesn't even matter to other people. And to kind of just like get things into better perspective when you're feeling, uptight about something or exhausted or just like you have too much on your plate. And so she put a lot of that kind of in perspective for me too. So they've been some great mentors along the way that I still try to keep in touch with.
I love that. Very important lessons, empowerment, and so many women that I've worked with, women entrepreneurs and women in the academic world, especially in fields that are predominantly male, suffer from some imposter syndrome. So having somebody model that, ownership of and empowerment is powerful, I think. And then, staying cool and calm and collected and being able to navigate the challenging times. What a great lesson. And, that's part of being successful as an entrepreneur, the ability to remain resilient and kind of steady, because there can be a lot of up and down roller coasters. And so I'm curious, either in your background or with some of the companies you work with, what do you think is the way, how do we handle the ups and downs of, being a business owner, being an entrepreneur? I mean, have there been times you have wanted to give up, or times when that you've worked with companies that wanted to give up, and how can you frame that, that whole time? Because at the end of the day, if you're left standing, it's like that's part of the success, right? Is executing past the failure.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody has their challenges at different jobs. For me, like when I was at the manufacturing company, I just thought it was just a whole different world. Like when products, I might put the wrong person's contact on the wrong product, or, different things can go wrong. But honestly, something that's like always helped me through, whatever job I was at or, industry I was trying to figure out, something that my brother and I's parents like always instilled on us was, there are 3 things that you can actually control. Everything else, like, sometimes you're not going to be the smartest person in the room. You might not, stuff like that. But like what you can control is, always doing your best, never quitting, and helping other people. And, if you do those 3 things consistently and, these challenges do come up, and even if you fail, if you can say that, all right, and you evaluate like what just happened, why did that fail? Like, was I doing my best? Did I quit? And like, was I helping other people along the way? And if you can say yes to those 3 things when you're not feeling in a good place or feel like you just failed at something, I think that's a success in itself. And that can help you move forward to the next thing and, better evaluate, like, was that really a failure? Probably not, and like, how can I learn from that moving forward to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Oh, I love that. And I think it must have been wonderful, probably challenging at times too, to have parents that were in the coaching space, because that's great advice, no matter what, I think, great advice for life. And I love, having those 3 questions that you can ask yourself can help you say, what was my role in this? Right. And as you said, find a way to learn from it. And a lot of times things are uncontrollable. We just can't change them. But if we do our best and we know that we've helped other people along the way, then I think we can be okay with that. So this has been a great conversation, Meghan. I've really enjoyed it. I always end by, and this was great advice you just gave, but I always end by asking my guests if there was one piece of advice that you could leave with our listeners, knowing that a lot of them are students, a lot of them are aspiring or practicing entrepreneurs. What would that advice be?
Yeah, no, I love that question. That's great. For me, I think I've gotten to where I am because and this is what Tampa Bay Tech does. So we're a networking organization. And so I've just always taken the time to, meet with people or listen to people's stories, and so to me, it's like always taking the meeting, I think is something that, I've excelled at. And, you might have an idea of, somebody, but until you have that conversation and, really sit down with them, you have no idea where that can go. It's rarely going to be a complete waste of time. And I think sometimes you can figure that out before. It's not like you have to take every single meeting, but, as long as it aligns with, your goals, I think it's always take the meeting. You never know where those conversations lead to, and just building your network is huge. It's gotten me basically to any role that I've been in, honestly. And, it's never a bad thing to work on that. And, people will appreciate you taking the time to meet with them and learn more about them and, feel that they're cared about. People really appreciate that.
Great advice. And I thank you for taking the meeting today and and being on the In Factor and sharing your story and all the wisdom that you're gaining through your career and working with these entrepreneurs. It's been a delight to talk to you. And I know a lot of our listeners would probably love to connect with you and maybe even find out more about Tampa Bay Tech, if we've got some tech folks out there. So, how can people reach you, connect with you, and or find Tampa Bay Tech?
Yeah, no, definitely. Our website's tampabay.tech, so pretty easy to find. And then I'm always available on LinkedIn. And yeah, if anybody wants to email me, I'm happy to, respond and answer any questions or have a meeting. Grab a cup of coffee. Love doing that and meeting new people. But my email is O'Keefe@tampabay.tech.
Thank you, Meghan.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you having me. And thanks to Troy for suggesting I come on.
Connecting, yes. Another entrepreneur that's doing great things here.
Yep, definitely. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to learn more about entrepreneurship, we would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of In Factor.